I feel like my parents gave me like so much magic, and it was just my job not to like fuck it up or screw it up. This was a movie, you know, that was meant to be made for sure on so many levels. And what's scary going into the next project is like I know I'm not going to maybe have all these pieces of the puzzle in the same way.
Hi, I'm Chuck Braverman. This is another episode of Westdoc Online. Today we are bringing you a feature film debut by a very talented young lady who has made a vérité film about her family.
What's with the pizza?
Nira wants pizza.
Nira doesn't want pizza.
She does.
Do you want pizza?
Sure.
Your father and I met in the choir in Queens College. He was a bass and I was an alto. And he was looking over at me. And after choir rehearsal, he came up to me and asked me if I wanted to go for a sandwich.
It's quite interesting, to say the least, and the film is about to be released theatrically, and I'm sure eventually on VOD we'll find out all about that. But before we begin, I want to remind you, we're brought to you in part by Real Screen. Real Screen Summit is coming up this June 6th through 9th in Dana Point. It's for filmmakers, it's for buyers, sellers, superstars, wannabes, and everybody in the non-fiction reality business. I've been going for 20 years. You should be there, and if you do, say hi to me. Now, I'd like to introduce Nira Burstein. Nira, hi, how are you?
Hi, good to be here. Thank you. How are you?
Good. I always like to ask, where are you, in what city are you recording? Where are you sitting right now? And are you in the East Coast or the West Coast, or where?
I'm on the East Coast. I'm in New York City. Yeah.
So you're 3 hours.
Important part of the film, yeah.
Can I in the city itself, or so?
Yes, I'm in the East Village. I'm downtown.
I love New York City. I feel like I am part New Yorker myself. As I've said probably before on this show half a dozen times, my dad was born in Brooklyn, went to Erasmus Hall High School, grew up across the street from Ebbets Field. So, you know, and my son, one of my sons, went to NYU, and I love New York. And I'm involved in a show that has to do with the East Village right now myself. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which I'll tell you all about it offline.
Okay. Perfect. Yes, I'd like to hear about it.
So your film is called Charm Circle, and Charm Circle is relates to the geographical area in Queens that your parents' house was, where you and your family grew up, and it's a vérité documentary feature film. I was going to say unlike no other, but in some ways I'm sure you've heard the comparison before to Grey Gardens. Do you want to tell us how did this film get started, and what were you expecting to get on camera, and what were your expectations for the film?
You know, it started as that, you know, very simply, I'm a filmmaker, and I saw the opportunity to make a really interesting film. I think my parents, their house, are subjects and characters that really pique my curiosity, trying to understand them, the way they live. And much like the characters in Grey Gardens, and I always see that as a compliment because that's one of my favorite films, you know, they're idiosyncratic, they're funny, they're charismatic, and I think that there could be a whole lot more documentaries that explore these on the margins characters. So that's how it started.
Let's take a look at the trailer.
There's a big difference between Black Label and Red Label, let me tell you.
It's springtime in Charm Circle, and we're all very happy to be here still. We haven't been thrown out into the street yet by the bank because we go from paycheck to paycheck with no savings. It's really too bad. And now I'm gonna walk back that way. That was a tap.
That was a hug.
Give me a hug. Give me a real hug. Come on. Put your arms around her like this.
This is from when they got married. And I like it because of the out of order sign that I think they put up on the chapel. Because they're completely out of order.
Why is the house so messy?
I know, I try to clean it.
I think maybe when everyone was young, they were probably a lot more hopeful.
We had a wonderful life together then. I was just healthy. There was nothing troubling me.
Grant.
I think I was misdiagnosed as being schizophrenic because I was able to graduate and get my master's degree.
I would tend to disagree with that.
How many schizophrenics do you know with masters?
At least one.
Abba cares, but he is not terribly supportive a lot of the time. I've got good news. Adina's getting married, but there's an issue because she's not marrying a man, she's marrying two women. It's against Jewish law, according to Uri.
Unbelievable.
Aggie and Silo are non-binary.
I said no.
He's trying to hide behind religious objection.
I gotta get out of here.
I think we should all go. We
With
deserve
that,
to
with
live
that,
in peace
man.
and harmony.
60s. Please. There is no peace. There is no harmony.
And that,
Okay, I'm going
and
inside,
the-
Nira.
and
I don't
the-
want to listen to this anymore.
11th. I feel like I'm in Leavenworth.
There's a lack of communication in this house.
Come on with me. I'll take you on a tour.
How easy was it or difficult? I mean, you know, when we say cinema verite, we think of fly on the wall, but you're, you know, sort of, you know, you just capture whatever happens, but you're not a fly on the wall because you're one of the family members, and not a distant family member. You're one of the three daughters in this film. And although we don't really see you too much because you're behind the camera, but I think your presence is felt. And again, it's like, you know, I think the big question I ask is like, how did you feel about showing your family to the world?
I mean, it's definitely scary and vulnerable, and, you know, it's, you know, normal to worry about feeling judged and everything. And, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we talked about it, and we watched the film, and we're like, we can see how this can be of greater benefit over our own, maybe, nerves or fears about it. And that's how, you know, we came to the decision, because sometimes, you know, it takes, you know, bravery, courage, especially I think on the parts of my parents, to share things that could be potentially embarrassing or, you know, open, you know, questions, you know, about their mental health. But that's the story, that's the truth. And, you know, I know personally from being on the festival circuit that this film has meant a lot to a lot of people, and it's a conversation starter. And it's meant to be like, oh, it's a film about my family, but it's a film that you can now bring and share with other members of the audience, sharing with their family or whoever they want to share it with. And they could talk about it that way.
When you were a child growing up, how did you feel about your family?
I love my family. I mean, I love them, and I want to see everyone doing well. That's part of also the reason why I wanted to make this, because I wanted to show them that despite the state of the house, which was always an upsetting thing for me, how much love and how much spirit and how great everybody is. And so I'm trying to capture that duality.
I would be remiss if I didn't say that the music in this film is quite wonderful also, which was done by your father, right? Which
Correct.
we see him we don't really see him in the film a great deal playing music, or we don't get the feel. I mean, I had to go back and double check the credits because the music in the film was so right on and supportive, and the right music and professional and slick and all that. And it feels like your dad was kind of just fiddling around when he was sat down at the keyboard or the guitar or something, right? You didn't really see him play that much or enough. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, he's very unassuming. It's very unassuming. But if you are paying attention, you do see him play. But a lot of the music was recorded just happening to be there with the camera. Some of it was score that we recorded separately, but a lot of it just organically happened and was able to be placed in the scene.
I don't want to give away a spoiler, and I won't, but so you can decide what you want to say, but I'm curious as to what the status is of your folks now, because the status obviously was somewhat in flux by the end of the film, to say the least.
Yeah. Well, I think you already said was with the house. So, I mean, I don't know. It's either I answer this with a spoiler or I don't. But, you know, my parents are in a better place, let's say that, doing well. And, you know, yeah.
The other event that was the catalyst, or was it the catalyst for you, or did it just happen to be happening at the time that one of your sisters, Adina, was getting married? And in a polyamorous wedding, she was marrying two women, which is unusual, but certainly less unusual today than it was, you know, whatever number of years ago. But still, how did that affect the film? Was that a catalyst for you to make the film, or was that already in works, or did it happen in the middle, or what was that?
Well, yes, and polyamorous, but to two non-binary individuals. I was already filming, so that was not something I knew was going to happen when I started. I was probably filming over a year at that point. But when this announcement happened, I immediately felt that this could be, in terms of an arc of a documentary, a great way to craft all the underlying tensions in the family without knowing how it would turn out. So, yeah, it was crafted in the way in the storytelling to like present as, okay, what will happen in the conclusion of this movie when it comes to this event.
Where do you stand with distribution right now? Isn't it about to be released theatrically, as I recall?
Well, there's theatrical release happening in the UK right now. And I don't know when we're going to air this, because it's hard to say if that was going to be done, and there's going to be some screenings for sure in New York. There's still festivals too.
So there's also some big names that are involved that I'm curious as to how much they're, like Fred Armisen's contribution. I mean, his name jumped out at me. Well-known actor, producer, director, Portlandia, Saturday Night Live. How did his association with this film happen, and what was his contribution?
Fred was, an integral part of the team in making this film. He watched every edit that I sent him and had incredible notes that really helped, craft the story into what it is. And he just, extremely sensitive, non-judgmental person. And it just, it was great to collaborate with someone with so much experience, as this was my first documentary. But we all felt on the rest of the team that he'd be such a great match given the work that he does. And he often says that he'd like to play my dad in a movie or something. And so I'm hoping we can have that remake happen.
Well, that, I mean, right there kind of begs the question. It's like, I mean, I don't want to, you don't sound like it's happening, but it sounds like it should be happening if it's not already and being written, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the doc will come out, you know, in a much more public way besides festivals. And then who knows, if we get enough of a following, this movie could have, you know, a very cinephile, you know, cult following potentially, and they'll want to see this movie maybe.
On this webcast, you know, there are a lot of documentary filmmakers that watch this, and I like to ask some geeky questions about camera gear and editing and stuff like that. And so you are the cinematographer, and I'd love to know what kind of camera did you use and how much footage, how many hours of footage did you shoot over what period of time roughly?
I use the Blackmagic cameras, like the small ones, the cinema cameras, and I shot over 5-6 years. 2 years really just to get the seasons because I wasn't shooting visuals. I was so in the house, I forgot to do that. And I'd say I shot maybe around 60, 70 hours, which is not an incredible amount of footage. And then on top of it, there was all these, you know, archival home videos, which I'd say was about 30 hours.
The Blackmagic camera that's shoulder mounted, or the one that looks like a big DSLR that you were shooting, just out of curiosity?
I think they're talking about the DSLR. It's the cinema camera. It was the old one, you know, because I started shooting in 2015.
And what NLE did you use to edit?
Well, I used Final Cut X, and the other editor, who was on Michael Levine for some time, he used Avid. And I don't recommend you know, navigating between the two. It can be pretty difficult.
And so how did you collaborate, since those two editors are not really brothers in arms? They're like totally different.
No. Well, he was on board, Michael, for a couple years, and when he had to move on to another project, but I felt really good about taking back on the edit. I had been editing myself for the 2 years before that. I just had to have everything, you know, migrated in terms of his edits with the assistant editor, who did an amazing job of basically copying the work, which is
so did you have to reconstruct it, or were you able to get an edit decision, an EDL, and just sort of have wherever he was at that point? Did you sort of have to start from scratch?
It wasn't starting from scratch because I was editing too, you know, in Final Cut. Like, there were scenes that I had edited, and it'd be like, this is my idea of what this scene can be. And he'd copy it into Avid. So there was this kind of back and forth. But yeah, there were scenes that he edited that just need to be reconstructed in Final Cut.
And what's your background in film? I mean, how did you come to this skill level? Did you go to film school somewhere, or did you just learn on the job, or what?
Well, I went to Queens College, and that's when I, you know, realized that I had a dream of wanting to be a filmmaker. And there wasn't a film program there. There was media studies, and there was like, an editing class and a production class. But living in New York City, I got internships, and I just learned to do it. And I mostly started in editing and worked my way backwards into the other roles in terms of shooting and directing and writing.
And what are you working on in the future, or are you still working on this, trying to get all the word out, or do you have a new couple of films going now?
I have a few projects going on, actually. Documentary-wise, I'm working on a new film about these boxing matches between male fashion models and city kids that took place in the 2010s in New York City, and I filmed these underground unlicensed boxing matches. And it was a party, sort of like my family in my 20s, and we didn't know what we were doing. And I'm following up now with everybody. And it's a really interesting film. It's a really interesting film capsule of this period of time in New York City, and what was going on. And then I also work on narrative projects. I'm hopefully shooting a narrative short film in May, called Dear Shop Girl.
Called what?
Dear Shop Girl.
Shop Girl.
And it's about this shop girl who works in a vintage clothing store, and a guy walks in announcing he needs the outfit he'll wear when he kills himself. So it's just a quirky little movie.
Did you think you were making a feature film when you started shooting, or did you not know, or did you know?
Well, I got my camera. I literally had just gotten my camera, bought it. And I was supposed to shoot a music video, and the weather prevented that. And I had been thinking in the back of my mind, I want to film my parents. And so I already asked them, look, I want to make a documentary about you guys. Is that okay? And they were like, both, sure. I don't think anyone knew how quite involved it would get, But that's the intention I had. And my mom told me something on the phone, which I'm not going to say, but it's something that is in the movie. But I was like, wait, don't tell my dad until I get there, because he wasn't home. And that's how we started, And I was like, yeah.
And did you have any expectations of, I want this to be on HBO or on Netflix, or just we're making a film and you're going to see what happens? Or what did you think? What did you want?
I mean, I wanted it to be widely available, and I wanted it to hopefully be a way for me to continue making films, which so far, knock on wood, it has been. And when it was, I would say I got one grant, from Jerome Foundation, and then one later from Jewish Story Partners, but that was after the film had its festivals. But I was dealing with a constant stream of rejection making this movie, in terms of grants and funding and trying to land distribution partners. But somehow, with the team that we did have, with Fred and Gigantic Pictures, stuck with it. And, when it got its first yes at a festival from Sheffield Doc Fest, it just started this whole new chapter in my life, and also, for my family. I love this movie so much. When I'm working on new stuff, I'm like, well, this movie's not going to be this movie, and so I get kind of sad. Material.
What did your family think of the film when they saw it?
It was very emotional, and everyone thought it was the best work I've done yet. And they had no notes. There was no, okay, you've got to not include that or cut that, or they just really trusted that I was making a film, that they could be proud of.
Well, I want to tell you how much I admire the film and think you did a really spectacular job. And I actually think that the film is going to have sticking quality, that people are going to be talking about this film for a long time, and that it's going to be around and, studied in documentary film classes and other places, and as Grey Gardens is in some ways. And yes, the Maisel brothers, I was a huge fan of the Maisel brothers too, and seen every one of their films over and over. So congratulations to you, and I hope the film will have a wide release soon so everybody can see Charm Circle. Thank you.
Thank you so much.